Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I thought I would go very quickly over the agenda over the next 2 weeks. Next week I will not be here, so I will be posting videos for you to watch online. And so since you won't be having class, you will have more videos than normal to watch to make up for the lack of a class. I'm not sure. I have a little bit that I already put up, something I recorded before, but most of it will be guest speakers, so to speak, videos from YouTube that you'll be watching. You'll still have a quiz on the following Wednesday. You'll still have a quiz next week, and you'll have a quiz after that. Every week you'll still have a quiz, so you'll go on with your regular routine, except you just won't have class next week. So just looking at the agenda, so to speak, if I can get it down where we can see it all. I'm going to have to move up a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about the art of innovation. There's relatively few videos to watch. So when we're done with our student presentation, we do have a student presentation in a few minutes. We'll watch probably at least a couple of them in class and talk about them. And so you'll be left with maybe a little over an hour's worth of videos from outside of class. These are primarily people who are major players in the Silicon Valley. Guy Kawasaki worked closely with Steve Jobs with Apple. And Andreessen, you met Andreessen last week. If you watched the videos, he was the guy that had a discussion with Clayton Christensen. So he's an investor in Silicon Valley, somebody who puts up risk capital to start new businesses in the Silicon Valley. And his partner is Ben Horowitz, so they work together. So they have similar ideas, but they're not exactly, everybody has their own independent perspectives on things. So you'll see some ideas from each of them as we go through today's videos. And again, I know we might even get through 3 of them today in class. I don't know how much we talk, and how much, but you'll have some to complete by next Wednesday. Then next week you'll have more, as I said, because we won't have a class, so you'll be watching video instead of class. And so there's more of a variety of people. I call this the Success Strategy Classics. A lot of these are older, based on older books. Not all of them are old necessarily, but Napoleon Hill. See, what are you guys presenting on today? You were presenting on Carnegie, is that? Yeah. Okay. Well, we may. I think you do have a video on that for next week as well. Dale Carnegie, I think, is in there. Maybe not. Anyway, they'll tell us about Dale Carnegie. But some of the other people, Napoleon Hill is a classic from, I'm not sure when he wrote that. I think it was probably about 50 years ago. I'm not sure exactly. I remember it was being used very widely when I was your age. Because somebody asked me to read it. Somebody challenged me to read it when I was your age. So Napoleon Hill's been around for a while. Some of the other guys are more recent. Robert Greene is a little more recent, as is Nathaniel Branden. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a bestseller by somebody else whose name you might get confused with our presenter this week. I think Robert Kiyosaki is how he pronounced his. So this week we'll look at Guy Kawasaki, and next week Robert Kiyosaki, something like that. Anyway, Rich Dad Poor Dad is about real estate investment. It is, well, first off, he's a good presenter, so that's one reason why I put him on. He does challenge your thinking about a lot of things, and so I think it's worth having your ideas challenged. And one of the things he challenges on is what is a good investment. And so while his investments are primarily real estate, he doesn't even count your home necessarily as a good investment. He's more looking for real estate that can pay, that you can make money off of, and your home isn't necessarily, you it ends up part of your estate. So when you die, so, your kids might have something if you have a house you paid off for, but it's not really working capital. It's not. He buys stuff they can rent out, so business property or rental property for like duplexes or apartments, things like that. So he in his case, he does another one of the things he does that kind of challenges common thinking is he talks about that's actually a good risk to put as little money down as you can and buy real estate. Because the worst thing that happens is if it doesn't pay off, they take your real estate back from you. And so he thinks that's one of the best investments in the world is you go to the bank, and especially once you have built up your credit rating, the bank will give you money to make an investment. Whereas getting money to invest in almost anything else is really hard. But banks are typically very ready to give investments on real estate because they have something that they can take back if you don't make your payments. And so that's one reason why he thinks that investing in real estate is such a good deal for more people is that you buy real estate, you build up your credit rating, then they give you more money to buy more real estate, you build up your credit rating, then they give you more money to buy more real estate, to build up your credit rating. Pretty soon you could have lots and lots of properties all on the bank's credit, so to speak. And so you don't necessarily have to have a lot of money to invest in real estate. You have to start off with a little bit, enough to make a down payment. But then as you build up your credit rating, the bank wants to loan money to people that they consider fairly safe loans. And real estate is one of the safest loans a bank can make. So the bank wants to give you money to invest in real estate, which is find any other investment you can make where somebody's trying to give you money to invest. So that's part of his idea is that real estate is, first off, it's extremely safe because even if the worst case scenario, you give the property back. That's your worst case scenario. But meanwhile, if it's something that you can rent out so they can make it more than makes its own payments, then you start building up and have all these payments coming in, and pretty soon you've paid it off, and so then you can keep going. So he and his wife both became multimillionaires very quickly. His wife is also an investor. I think this may be a second wife, I'm not sure. But anyway, they met as kind of real estate investors, and she actually made her fortune before he did. So they're both pretty good at it. And she recommends that it's a very good field for women because, again, there's a lot of, if a woman, for example, has children, what kind of investment can you make and what kind of job can you have while you're also trying to take care of your children, so forth. Real estate is one of the easiest things you can get into, real estate investments, for a woman. And as I said, she ended up making her fortune before he did. So there's lots of ideas on that. So I want you to watch that because it is the only thing that I have related to real estate, but it's more than that. Like I say, it's important, I think, to let people challenge your thinking. And Robert Kiyosaki definitely challenges people's thinking. And so whether you like it or not, whether you agree with him or not, it's worth the mental exercise to listen to him. He's a good speaker and challenges your thinking for sure. Anyway, so for next week, as I said, I will not be here, and so you have quite a few things to watch. So it's like 3 hours worth of videos for next week, but you're not in class for 2 hours. So 2 of those hours next week will be instead of coming to class. Carol Dweck is interesting. She's really, there's several of them that are outstanding. I'm starting off at Don Ariely. He's a economist. He's a behavioral economist, one of the top in the world, and he looks at actually kind of stupid things that we do without thinking about it. So he kind of goes the other way. He doesn't pump us up. He says we're all idiots, in essence, that we make really stupid decisions sometimes. We base our decisions on bad data. So it's worth, again, understanding how sometimes our minds are not our best friends sometimes. We need to understand how sometimes our minds can deceive us. And so Dan Ariely does a good job of that. That's his job, is to look at behavioral economics, and that includes basically what stupid things we do economically. So that it's interesting. He's a very good speaker as well, very good presenter. You'll enjoy that. The Tony Robbins video on magic and visualization is interesting. Going back to Carol Dweck, she's a famous author. She's a Stanford professor, and all of her career, she's been looking at how to improve learning and how. So she kind of focuses on children, but it's not just really children. If you think about it, what she's teaching us is also for us, for adults. Because it's the same problem that children have, we as adults have. And one of them is what she calls a growth mindset. That some children and adults, when they're confronted with an obstacle, for example, they do badly in an exam. Some children and adults kind of blame it on the teacher. They blame it on something. They can't handle failure. And so it actually, in contrast to that, there are other children and other adults who are challenged by failure. And if they fail, they learn from the failure, and they can actually measure this in the brain waves. They've hooked up children to EKGs and seeing how their brain is responding to failure. And the children that run from failure, basically, they just kind of go blank. I can't believe I failed. Oh no, I can't. That failure is the hardest thing for them to accept, and they do not grow from it. So they fail, and then they fail because they can't handle failure. Whereas the children who understand that they can grow from failure, when they fail, you can see their brains light up, and they're thinking already, how can I improve? How can I improve? And their whole response in an EKG, or I don't know if it's an EKG or whatever, however they're measuring the brain waves, is totally different. So it's and she's talking about some new approaches they're using where they've one of them that's very, very exciting is that they've gone. One of the lowest achieving, I've talked to you a little bit about my working with migrant students in America. They're the lowest achieving in America. Right next, really close to the migrants, are the Native American children. They live typically as part of America's guilt syndrome, so to speak. They defeated all the Indian tribes, and then they gave them land, and they actually basically gave them their freedom again. They said, this is your land. You can run, you have your own country kind of within our country. And so Indian tribes have their own reservation, they call it, which is kind of a nation within our nation, that we gave them and said, it's all yours. You do what you want to do. And sometimes they don't make good choices, frankly, at least not by the normal civilization sort of perspective. They don't make good choices by Anglo-Saxon perspective. They wouldn't be making good choices according to Chinese perspective. They wouldn't be making good choices by a lot of perspectives that, from developing countries and stuff. A lot of the adults drink too much. They have alcoholism problems on the reservations. The children are not necessarily encouraged to learn and to grow educationally. And so, consequently, they score way below white or Asian children in school, and just a little bit above the migrant students who have the additional language problem. But anyway, so what Carol Dweck and her team did, they went in and they taught the children from this Indian tribe about growth mindset. About how you actually, as you learn new things, your brain actually does grow. It builds new neurons. And so you're actually, as you confront problems and as you overcome problems, as you learn new things, your mind actually grows. and they taught them some of these concepts and helped them to not be afraid of challenges, not to be afraid of failure, but to believe they could succeed. At the end of that, within 1 year, they gave them the same test they gave the kids from basically the Microsoft children from the good part of Seattle area, Seattle, Tacoma area in Washington, where the Microsoft executives and so forth, engineers are living. They gave the same test to the Microsoft kids as they gave to the Indian kids, and the Indian kids outscored them in 1 year. So the idea of her book and of her presentation is we all need a growth mindset. We all need to realize that we can be much better than we are, that we can learn much better, we can actually grow our brains if we're willing to take on new challenges. So that's kind of a synopsis of her presentation, and it's very well worth listening to help you understand that challenges are not a bad thing if you accept them right. If you accept your challenges and meet your challenges and work to overcome your challenges, your mind will grow, and you will, are much more likely to succeed than if you feel terrible about flunking a test or whatever and just run from it, make excuses for it, blame somebody else for it, whatever. Or in some cases, she said the kids admit they would cheat the next time in order to not fail again. Of course, they don't learn anything by cheating, but they would rather cheat than to actually work harder to pass the test next time, because they feel is their option. They cannot fail, therefore they'll cheat, and they don't believe, I guess, in themselves that they can overcome their own obstacles besides cheating. So anyway, so that will be next week. So those are all videos you'll watch next week. I will still have a quiz set up for the week after, which actually I'll already be back by then, but but next week I will not be here. So next week there will not be a class. Next week you'll be watching all these videos under week 14 instead of class. As I said, it adds up to about 3 hours, so 2 hours instead of class, and then your hour of homework. Watch, take notes, and you'll have a quiz at the end of that. Any questions on what's happening then? So I guess I'll pause there, and I'll go ahead and invite our presentation team if they're ready to come on up and make their presentation, and then we'll proceed with the art of innovation after that.
我介绍你们啊，你们自己介绍你们自己啊。So good afternoon to my fellow friends and Dr. Ken. So today we are going to present a title which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm Go In Ni.
I'm Irene Poon.
I'm Lee Sinti.
So first, part 1, Fundamental Techniques in Handling People. Principle 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Humans are creatures of emotion, not logic. It is common and natural to get defensive when a person is criticized for decisions or mistakes made, regardless if they feel they were wrong in their choices or not. When people are criticized, they strive to justify themselves in retaliation of their now wounded pride and sense of importance. No matter how constructive this criticism may be, it still stings and leaves the person resentful towards the criticizer. This first principle of part 1 talks about taking a different approach to criticizing, which states that instead of condemning people, we should try to understand them. We should try to figure out why they did and what they did. This method breeds tolerance, sympathy, and kindness. We should try to see the situation from their point of view and be kind in our response to their action. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Dr. John Dewey, one of America's most profound philosophers, said, "The deepest urge in human nature is the desire to feel important. This is the desire that led Lincoln to study law books, the desire that inspired Dickens to write his novels, the desire that made Rockefeller amass millions of dollars. This is a desire to feel immense self-worth and high self-esteem. What better way to raise self-esteem than receiving sincere appreciation? We want to appreciate people, not flatter them. The difference? Appreciation is sincere while flattery is insincere. Only show appreciation when you mean it. If you are paying someone a compliment just because you think it will help win them over, they will pick up on it and it will not help you out. The difference is easily recognizable. While appreciation is admired, flattery is condemned. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person in eager want. This principle talks about focusing more on what others want instead of what you want. The chapter opens out humorously saying, I often went wishing up in Maine during the summer. Personally, I'm very fond of strawberries and cream, but I have found that for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. This analogy is to show that if you want the fish to bite, you have to bait the hook in their favor. We should look at the situation from the other person's point of view as well as our own. If we are trying to sell someone on an idea, service, product, or something else, we should see it from their angle and express how they will benefit from what we have to offer. So now I'll pass to the next one.
Hello, my name is Xiamen. I will be present the part 2, six ways to make people like you. The principle 1, become genuinely interested in other people. Dale Carnegie said that to be interesting, be interested. You make more friends in 2 months by being interested in them than in 2 years making them interested in you. On the book's page 58 said that put yourself out to do things for other people that require time, energy, unselfishness, and thoughtfulness. Kindness can have a profound lifelong effect on people. Also, Dale Carnegie said that the only way to make solid and lasting relationships is to be genuinely interested in them. Next, principles 2. Smile. Smile to people when you greet them. Dale Carnegie said that I like you and you make me happy. Flash your eyeballs upwards, which is an unconscious indicator of linking and acceptance. Our actions influence our feelings is bigger than our feelings influence our actions. By smiling, you will also be naturally happier. It is not what you have, or who you are, or where you are, or what you are doing that makes you happy or unhappy. Think about it. From the book's page 66, there is more information in a smile than a frown. So encouragement is a more effective teacher than punishment. Next, principles 3. Remember their names. People love the sounds of their names more than any sounds in the world. Remember their names, which will make them feel valued. Some technique for remembering names are repeat their names, asking for the spelling, writing down, and concentrating on the information or studying it. Even in large, relatively impersonal corporations, knowing employees' names can warm the work atmosphere. So remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sounds in any language. Next, principles 4. Be a good listener. The number 1 rule, to care others. Being a good conversationalist is being a good listener. Face the speakers and maintain eye contact. People may not be looking for advice when they have a problem. Sometimes they just need to vent or work through thoughts on their own by verbalizing them in a willing listener. The book's page 84 said that a violent critic is subdued in the presence of a patient, sympathetic listener as they desire is an audience. Next, principles 5. Talk in terms of his interests. Most people like to discuss their interests and hobby. Begin by talking about what interests the other person to break the ice and establish rapport. Getting someone warmed up first before presenting a questions. Problems or proposition can often lead to better results. Dale Carnegie says that a person's hurt is to talk about the things he or she treasures most. Next, Principle 6. Make him feel important. Ask yourself what is it about them that you admire, then give yourself an answer. Honest admirations of another person, of their price, possessions, hobbies, pets, or whatever, give them the recognition they crave and rarely receive. It can help smooth business deals by breaking the ice or finding common interests. Then you will get the countless friends and constant happiness. This is the part of mine, then I will pass the mic to my friends.
Hello, my name is Irene. Now I'm going to talk about the part 3. How to win people to your way of thinking. Principle 1. To get the best of an argument, avoid it. Dale Carnegie has said, you can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it, and if you win it, you lose it. He makes the point that we can't win an argument. Why he says like that? It's because even if you officially win in an argument, but all you get is someone who hates on you, because you have hurt his pride and his feeling. So remember, you can't gain anything through winning in an argument. If it is a lose-lose situation, there are 9 ways to keep a disagreement from becoming an argument. First, welcome the disagreement. Second, distrust your first instinctive impression. Third, control your temper. Fourth, listen first. Fifth, look for areas of agreement. 6. Be honest. 7. Promise to think over your opponent's idea and study them carefully. 8. Thank your opponent sincerely for their interest. 9. Postpone action to give both sides time to think through the problem. Principle 2. Show respect for his opinions. When you attack someone's opinion directly, like say to him, you are wrong, that is a terrible idea. You will push them on the defensive. Then 2 things will happen. First, they will resent you, because you have hurt their pride and their feelings. Second, they will do anything to prove that they are actually right. Instead of saying those words that hurt people's feelings, you can say in other ways, like, I thought otherwise, but I might be wrong. Well, that's possible. I thought that, but you might be right. Principle 3. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. When we admit our wrong to people, people will trust us and begin to sympathize with our way of thinking. It is simple to admit our mistake. Just say I'm sorry, just enough. If you make some mistake that might go unnoticed, challenge yourself to point it out and admit it. Principle 4. Begin in a friendly way. If we begin our interaction with others in a friendly way, we can lower his guard, lower his tension, and also increase the chance of a resolution. Anger against anger is the first way of discussing and solving issues. Dale Carnegie has said, the sun can make you take off your coat more quickly than the wind, and the kindliness, the friendly approach and appreciation can make people change their minds more readily than all the bluster and storming in the world. So, start in a friendly way. Choose the kind and friendly approach. Be like the sun, not the wind. Principle 5. Get him saying yes immediately. When we're talking to someone, we should begin with the things we agree on and emphasizing the things on which we agree. When someone starts out saying yes a few times, the natural tendency is to keep going with yes. The key of this principle is to keep your opponent from saying no. Principle 6. Let him do a great deal of the talking. We should never brag or never monopolize the conversation. People do not like listen to our boss. They enjoy talking themselves. So, let the others do the most of the talking. Let them share their ideas. On the other hand, you should show your care and hear his opinion. Principle 7. Let him feel that the idea is his. Ideas can best be carried out by allowing others to think they arrive at it themselves. People inherently like ideas that come to on their own better than those that are handed to them. If you want cooperation with others, you should let them feel that the idea is come out by themselves. Principle 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. This principle is at the absolute highest importance when dealing with people. We should apply it when we interacting with people. We must understand that even if other people are completely wrong, they don't think they are. They think they are right. So we should see the situation from their point of view as well. Principle 9. Be sympathetic with his ideas and desires. People want to be understood and hungering for sympathy. If we can sympathize with others, they will appreciate our side and always come to our way of thinking. Carnegie has suggested a sentence that will put to rest any argument. I don't blame you for feeling the way you feel. If I were you, I would feel the exact same way. The point of this principle is people love feeling understood. Principle 10. Appeal to the noble motive. A person usually has two reasons for doing a thing, one that sounds good and a real one. When you want someone else to do something, you need to phrase them. You can say to him, "You are generous. You are always so great." Then we can successfully convince them to follow our ideas if we can appeal to others' noble motive. Principle 11. Dramatize your ideas. Sometimes it is not enough just simply state your ideas. You must dramatize your ideas if you want to get attention from the others. Your ideas must be interesting, vivid, and dramatic. Principle 12. Throw down a challenge. Every successful person loves the game because it is a chance for them to prove them they are strong, they totally have the ability win in the game. If you want someone to do something, you must give him a challenge. People will often rise to meet it because people desire to win and want to be the best. According to Charles Schwab, the best way to get things done is to stimulate competition. So we should learn from Charles Schwab and throw down a challenge.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lee Sinti. I will present the part 4, Be a Leader, How to Change People. Principle 1. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. It is much easier to listen to unpleasant things after things after we have been praised for our good points. That's why the first step to changing people without offending them is to begin with the appreciation for their strength. For example, if a colleague writes a speech for a conference that we feel too lengthy or inappropriate for that particular audience, we might start to complimenting her speech and nothing that it would make for a great blog post. We could point out a few reasons it would be better suited for a written post than a speech. But chances are that even from our first mention, she will came to realize our point because we told her it would be great fit for something else. She not offended that we thought it was a bad fit for the conference. Next, principle 2. Call attention to people's mistake indirectly. Most of us respond bitterly to direct criticism. When we are looking to change people without offending them or arousing resentment, simply change 1 or 3 letter words can be our key to success. Many people began their criticism with sincere phrase followed by the word but and their critical statement. For example, a parent trying to convince her son to care more about his schoolwork. She might say, "We are really proud of you, son, for getting better grade this semester. But if you had worked harder in your maths class, you would have done even better." The son might feel encouraged right up until he hears the word but. The word but makes it seem like the phrase was only a contrived lead into his mother's criticism. However, by changing the word but to and, it may seem like the phrase will only convert. It may seem like it may more easier to the son to accept. For example, "We are really proud of you, son, for getting better grade this semester, and if you will continue your effort, that next semester your maths grade can be up with all others' grade." Now it's more easier for the son to accept the phrase because there was no follow-up with direct criticism. The next step to change people's ways without inflicting negative feeling is to admit that we are also susceptible to mistake. Principle 3. Talk about your own mistake before criticizing him. It's much easier to listen to a description of our own fault when the person criticizing began by humbly saying that he is also far from perfect. When you are about to criticize someone, ask yourself, what was I like was that age? What was I like when I was that age? What was I thinking when I was at their level of experience? By asking this question, your empathy wheels will start turning and you will realize that you have opportunity to be a great mentor to this person. Try to be a positive influence. Think of yourself as your mentor instead of their boss, friends, and parents. Principle 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct order. No one's like to take order. What if instead of telling people what to do, we gave them opportunity to do things themselves, to learn from their own mistake? Instead of saying do this or don't do that, we should often say, "You might consider this," or "Do you think that would work?" Next time you are about to give an order to a child or employees, instead of telling them what to do, ask them questions that will help them or bring them to the conclusion. That is the best action to take and will make them want to do it. Principle 5. Let the other person save face. When we disagree with someone, even if we are right and he is definitely wrong, we only destroy his ego by causing him to lose face. I have no right or do anything that diminishing a man in his own eyes. What matters is not I think of him, but what he thinks of himself. Hurting a man in his dignity is a crime. This sentence is said by this guy, and I don't know how to pronounce his name because it's in French. When you have to deliver a decision or information that will cause negative feelings, think about how you can make the person feel good about himself. Avoid delivering negative feedback in front of others or setting up a situation that will be embarrassing for the person. Think of yourself. If I were him, I were the person that you delivering the negative feedback. What you'll feel when you heard this information? And design your approach accordingly. Principle 6. Praise every improvement. One of the most powerful abilities we have is helping others realize their potential. We can do this by praising their strengths. We are doing this infrequently because it is more easier to point out someone's fault, even when it's hard to find out things to praise. Try hard to find some things we should praise often. We should also specific in our praise. When praise is specific, it comes across as more sincere, not some things we are saying just to make the other person feel good. Principle 7. Give him a fine reputation to live up to. We tell our children or employees that they are stupid or bad. Similar to applying to people's nobler motivate, giving the other person a lofty reputation to live up. Instead, to design to meet those expectations. When you are trying to change someone's mind, give them a reputation to live up to by saying some things like, I respect the fact that you are always willing to listen and are big enough to change your mind when the fact warrant a change. Principle 8. Encourage. Make the fault seems easier to correct. We tell our children or employee they are stupid or bad at a certain things, have no gift for it, and are doing it all wrong. We strip them of any motivation to improve. If instead use the opposite technique and openly encourage them as they take step toward improvement, we will inspire a much higher level of motivation to continue. Rather than simply telling someone their goal is far out of reach, find ways to encourage small victories when possible. This smaller compliment can help make room for sharing guardians while keeping them inspired. For example, a company that they have their vision. The company also set the mission to achieve their vision. Principle 9. Make him happy about doing what you suggest happier. The final key to being a leader and changing people without arousing resentment is to make the person happy about doing what we want them to do. If you choose another internal candidate for the job, tell the one who didn't get the job that you felt he was too important to the organization in his current role to reassign. To be an effective leader, keep this guideline in mind when it is necessary to change attitude or behavior. First, be sincere, don't promise anything you can't deliver. Second, know exactly what you want the other person to do. Third, be empathic. Ask yourself what it is the other person really want. Fourth, consider the benefits that person will receive from doing what you suggest. Fifth, match those benefits to the person wants. The last one, when you make your request, put in a form that will convey to the other person the idea that he personally will benefit. Next, I will pass it to my team.
So the last part 5, making your home life happier. So the first one, there are 7 principles of it. So the first one is don't nag. Women often nag their husband because they feel that if they don't, their husband won't get things done. In reality, if you treat your husband like a child, He will likely act like one. If you treat him like an adult and allow him to take on responsibility for his own behaviors, he will most likely act like a grown-up. Nagging doesn't tend to yield results. How many times have you asked your spouse to do something repeatedly and the result was that the work got done and you both ended up feeling happy and satisfied? Probably not very often. Nagging also can actually decrease your spouse's motivation. By the third time you ask him to do something, he is less likely to want to do it. No one likes to be nagged. Nagging can contribute to a lot of negative feelings. The person who is nagged often feels frustrated, angry, and resentful. The next one, don't try to make your partner over. Why trying to make or cause your spouse will backfire? Don't criticize. Constructive criticism does not hurt. It advises and informs. If you take it up another notch beyond constructive, it can destroy someone's life. You may think you are helping if you are always criticizing your partner, but something else is happening. You find yourself alone or trapped in a negative cycle. There are consequences when you point a finger at someone. He or she will try to hide things from you. He or she will see you as a burden. He or she will lose self-confidence and they will become dependent on you. Give honest appreciation. Who doesn't like to be recognized in a positive way? I know I like to hear well done, and I bet you do too. I think we all want that. I'm of the opinion that the person who gruffly says, I don't need a pat on the back to know what I'm doing a good job, needs it more than anyone. I make that assertion because they probably never get praise and their reaction is a self-defense mechanism. It will sting to you. You want to praise but never get it. Pay little attention. Make a point to really listen to them. Listening includes making eye contact during conversation and giving your full attention to your partner. Show them you care about what they are saying and provide response that further the conversation or that you understand the point they are trying to make. Verbally affirm that you care for them. Get into the habit of affirming your love or respect for your significant other on a daily basis. If you are past the initial exchanging of I love yous, then make sure you are saying I love you regularly. Make time for them, no matter how busy you are. Making an effort to spend time together is a great way to show affection to a partner. Even if you have to pencil a hangout time into your hectic schedule, you should do so. Giving them your time is a small but meaningful way to show you care. Be cautious. Courtesy is the use of polite manners. A cautious person is respectful and considerate of others. Cautious behavior requires a selfless attitude and can give you a perspective on others' situation. Kindness and consideration can build your reputation as a respectable, thoughtful person. The last one, read a good book on the sexual side of marriage. According to Dr. Pope, failure in marriage is usually due to 4 causes. He lists them in this order. The first one is sexual maladjustment. The second one, difference of opinion as to the way of spending leisure time. The third one, financial difficulties. And the last one, mental, physical, or emotional abnormalities. All authorities or divorce agree upon the absolute necessity for sexual compatibility. For example, a few years ago, Judge Hoffman of the domestic sex says the famous psychologist John B. Watson is admittedly the most important subject in life. It is admittedly the thing which causes the most shipwrecks in the happiness of men and women. There is no way in which this ability can be better acquired than through a book of sound learning and good taste. So this is our presentations today. Any questions?
Hello, Q&A sections. So, number 1, in order to make a happier home life, we should do all the belows except. Okay, the answer is C. Force your partner to change. And number 2, the expression on wears on one face is far more important than the clothes one wears on his back. What is the principles on this sentence? Anyone want to answer it? Okay. The answer is C. Principal's smile.
So I hope all you guys can help to answer these questions. So the question number 3, which of the following is not a method to win people to your way of thinking? Can anyone answer? Anyone? What? What? A? No. So the answer is C, always win in an argument. Okay, so next question, question number 4. How can you change people without giving offense or arousing resentment? So this question a bit wrong. There are 3 correct questions and this is accept. Which question? Yeah. Which answer? Anyone? Yeah, yes, correct. It's donkey. Make sure you tell them they are wrong and they need to change. So this is the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Now, could you just put a number by each presenter, so like 1, 2, 3, 4 in order that you presented, just so I can make sure. Okay. Let me save a copy of this first, and so I have it. And you can pull that out. Yeah, I really appreciate that presentation. I think the team did a good job, and I think that is a presentation that you should all want a copy of. Dale Carnegie, as I said, he's one of the. I'm not sure, but I think he wrote his book like 100 years ago, practically. I think maybe like 1930s or something like that. We'd have to Google it to make sure. Maybe do you guys remember when he wrote that? Did you find that when he wrote that book? I don't remember, but it's been around a long time. And yet, the more I listen to it today, I mean, it's not like I've studied it before, but the team did a good job of presenting, and I thought more and more about it, and more about how it coincides and intertwines so well with Dr. Covey's 7 habits, especially those that relate to habits 4, 5, and 6. His ideas intertwine extremely well with 4, 5, and 6, habits 4, 5, and 6, and maybe even amplify a little bit on what Dr. Covey teaches. So I do, as I was listening to it today, I thought, gee, I should be emphasizing that book more. I couldn't also help but even think about my relationship with my own sister. We are at political odds, and so recently she unfriended me in Facebook because I'm conservative and she's liberal, and we cannot agree on American politics right now. And there's a lot of people in America that their families are being disrupted by politics. And the more I listened about Dale Carnegie's idea, the more I realized it just isn't worth it. She's not going to convince me, and I'm not going to convince her. And anyway, so it made me think about some ways that I can improve my relationship with my sister. My children all think pretty much the way I do. Most of the people in my family think the way I do, but my sister is the one that is totally contrary. So I need to improve my relationship with her. So anyway, do encourage you to think about that one, and maybe watch some more videos on YouTube from Dale Carnegie, or actually read the book. There was a video on Facebook recently where somebody went out and asked people one simple question in America that was, name me one book. And none of these people could think of a book, even the name, let alone having read it recently. And I'm sure they skipped some of the people who actually could remember a book, but they had all sorts of people who could not even think of the name of one book. Religious or political or novels or anything else, they could not think of the name of one book, which tells us how things are changing in our society, in some ways a little bit scary way. Books are still important. Books probably change lives more than just about any other medium in some ways, at least if people actually read them, because by the time you read a good book, it really just the process of reading a good book that's say 300 page long or maybe even longer, you can't get through that without somewhat changing your perspectives on things. And I think Dale Carnegie's book is one of those that could change our perspectives, along with of course Dr. Covey's. So I encourage you to read, period, and I encourage you to read some good books. I think Dale Carnegie's is one that's worth reading. Okay, so I would like to go ahead and watch another video or two and talk about that. So I'm going to go back. I think I'll go from my Word document here, and I'm going to pause this that Kawasaki made jumped out at you most. The most revolutionary or most helpful to you. Speak up. Something must have impressed you there, because he helped Steve Jobs change the world. So something that they did must have been right. What do you think?
I think for the Apple products, they really emphasize value. They don't really fight the price. So, for example, once the Apple 7 actually came out, iPhone 7 actually came out, and then before we see that other companies started to copy their design. They are not afraid of being different. They are not afraid of putting out something new, which also relates to one of the points saying they are not afraid to ship. They are testing out.
Kind of relates also to that other saying he had. Don't worry, be crappy. Go ahead. You may not be totally ready to go, but if you sit around until everything's perfect, somebody's going to beat you to the market for one thing. But if you are, in each case he mentioned, he felt like theirs was still better than anything else in the market. And so that kind of goes along with what Clayton Christensen was saying, that that you look for that. Those people, when you have something unique and something of value, again, now he's looking for this new market. Well, that's basically what Apple did. They looked at, in their case, they would look at a little bit higher end market than IBM was going for. So they're always going for a little bit better product, a little bit higher quality, higher value than IBM did, and have changed the world in the process. It's kind of interesting, just a kind of way of background. If since you're young enough, you probably don't realize this, but in the early 1990s, Apple kicked Steve Jobs out. He was no longer the CEO. They kicked him out and didn't think he was a good CEO anymore. And then they were nearly bankrupt when they brought him back in. So they kicked him out, and towards the end of the 1990s, they brought him back in to try to help save the company. At that point, there was no iPhone, there was no iPad, and it was Steve Jobs who came back and said, okay, what's the next curve? One of the other suggestions was the real innovation, or whatever, the real challenge, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but the next big deal, the next curve. So everybody's fighting to compete with where they're at now, and he was always looking at the next curve. And so it was then when he came back to Apple that he started promoting the idea we need to go mobile. It's time to go mobile now. And so suddenly, within just a few years, Apple went from being a laughing stock. It was almost broke. It was almost ready to go under. Steve Jobs came back, brought in, sponsored the mobile revolution, and suddenly, and then they were worth more than, they became the most valuable technology company in the world again. Because Steve Jobs came in with another vision, looking at the next curve again. So it's important to understand that. Is actually his greatest successes came his second time around after he had been thrown out of the company. The company that he created, threw him out, and he came back and saved the company and achieved his greatest successes the second time around. So it's also kind of maybe a lesson about life. It's just because somebody one day throws you out doesn't mean that your life is over. You still have more things to accomplish, and it may be, you don't know when it's going to happen. In this case, his case, I can't remember exactly how long it was, but I think it's nearly 8 years or so before they brought him back in and said, okay, we threw you out, but maybe we need your help now. We need you to give us some more inspiration and some more vision. And so he brought him back in, and he renovated, he again, changed the world again. Okay, let's, well, we're about out of time, so we may not be able to see another one. As I mentioned earlier, so you do have, another, quite a bit there to watch, sorry. Maybe I will, I'm not sure what I'd want to take off. Probably the one I already showed you, the first one. But you'll have some overlap in this. Again, you have the two Kawasaki's and you have the two Andreessens. Maybe they're all too long to try to fit in right now. Maybe we'll just 5 minutes. We don't really have time. But I think all these people have some important insights. They're all technology people, so if you're not interested in technology, this may not be of interest to you, but except that frankly, you should be interested in technology. That doesn't mean you need to be a technologist. I'm not a technologist. I'm just about somebody who absolutely believes that technology can change the world. And so I've always tried to be as close to the cutting edge as possible within my industry. So one of the things that I think in the next video by Kawasaki, he mentions that desktop publishing saved the company. When they were fairly early, I think it was with Macintosh, they had a powerful computer, but the powerful computer didn't have anything to demonstrate that it was better than IBM. And so with word processing, about the same. Spreadsheets, about the same. Database, about the same. And so they had nothing to really show that theirs was the best computer. But then desktop publishing came along, and it was almost exactly when I got into it myself. I got into desktop publishing in 1987. Actually in 86, in that time, the industry had, I may have mentioned to you, the industry had kind of like desktop publishing, but one machine was as big as this lectern, and I may have told you this already, and it had two monitors, 2 keyboards, a joystick, and that was our version of desktop publishing. Each machine cost $100,000, and so in our company, which had 50 employees, and certainly we published about 50,000 newspapers every day. They could only afford 4 of them, and we had to share 2 of them with the advertising department so they could build advertising. And so in part of the day there were 10 editors, and we could only electronically put together the newspaper with 2 machines until after people in advertising went home, then we had 4 machines. But we kept bottlenecking around these paginators, we called them at that time. That was in 1986 when I started learning pagination, electronic publishing or production of newspaper pages. The next year, I was hired to run the journalism program part-time of a local college. At the same time that I stayed on as an editor at the daily newspaper, and they had just bought desktop publishing, and nobody in the whole university knew how to do desktop publishing. A couple of years later, I was maybe one of the first professors in the world to teach desktop publishing at a university level. And then I taught 2 different brands of desktop publishing. But anyway, my point was, in fact, right now at the university, we just bought Quark Express, and they're making us a really good deal. We got 1,000 licenses for $1,000 with Quark Express, and that was specifically the desktop publishing system that saved Quark. Quark, it was made specifically for Quark, Quark Express saved Macintosh, basically, because desktop publishing demonstrated why it was better than IBM easily. I actually learned on IBM, and I still mostly used it on IBM, but when I finally, a couple of years later, the company that sold us the big paginators wanted to charge the publishing company $30,000 for each of the 4 machines just to upgrade its software. And by then, I and another guy had finally convinced them, you need to dump the paginators. I know that cost you $400,000 to buy those paginators, but you're actually better off to go into desktop publishing. And for less than, they wanted to charge them $120,000 to upgrade their the software and the 4 paginators. And for well below that, we got a whole bunch of big Macintosh computers, big screen monitors, and Quark Express to then electronically put together our newspaper with off-the-shelf software and computers. Anyway, going back to my point is that all the way along, my career has been enhanced greatly by just being aware of technology and trying to be one of the first people into that new technology in the field of communications. And I think all of you, as you proceed, I kind of lived through this revolution. As I said, when I started my career, nobody had a PC. And within a few years, they had really crappy PCs. Nothing that most people they just laugh at. About the only thing they did was play games. So they were children's toys mostly. And it took, so it was a long time. After I graduated from college, it was about 20 years before IBM finally, or I guess probably the biggest important thing that happened was 20 years later, Microsoft gained kind of the corner on the market of operational software for the IBM type computers. Of course, at the same time, Apple was coming in with theirs. But before that, there was no standard. There was no standard operating system. So you could buy some software, and the next year, that company might go broke, and their software was not transferable to anything else. It was just chaos until I was already, that would have made me basically 40 years old before we had any consistency in the PC world. Before that, it was pretty much chaos. But I was growing through the chaos and into the Microsoft and Apple eras. Somebody did a presentation in my other class that said that, I was thinking it was earlier, but they said that World Wide Web wasn't created until 1994. I thought it was earlier than that, 1992. I thought a couple of years earlier, but I was making web pages by 1996 at least. Again, I was just looking, how do I do new things? How do I take advantage of technology? And I am absolutely not a technologist, but I'm interested in technology, and it has greatly enhanced my career to keep abreast of those technology changes in our society. And if it was important to me, it's definitely important for you, because the technology is going to change so rapidly. So you should be interested in technology if you're not, because if you're not willing to, we talked about lifelong learning before. If you're not willing to apply lifelong learning in the area of technology, you're going to be way behind very quickly, because technology is the great equalizer. The technology allows somebody who doesn't have a great memory, or doesn't, maybe isn't real talented, or maybe doesn't have good language skills. You can find software to help you. You can, that computer can help you do things that you can't do yourself, and it's going to be more and more so as you go along. It's going to be able to do more for you. So people need to embrace technology to enhance their own skills all the way along the way. And as we talked about some of the disruptive technology, and we know there's absolutely no way that technology is not going to disrupt society in the future. By technology, in ways that are great and in ways that are may be terrible. But we're going to, as you see, artificial intelligence become more and more used in our economy and society. As you see some of those things, as computers and robots can do more things, that by definition is going to disrupt the world. So where is your place in that world? As AI and robotics start replacing workers, what is your role in society? What's your role in the economy? Your best defense is to be as smart as you can be about technology, because you will get to that next curve before somebody else does. You'll figure out what is that you will have jobs that don't exist now. You'll find those jobs, and you'll be ready for those jobs that come up. You can help create those jobs as the opportunities arise. So if ever there was a time where you need to be alert to technology, new technologies and stuff, it is now your generation. It benefited me, but wow, I mean, there is just no choice for you if you have any hope of not having a very challenging life. I think you absolutely have to embrace technology. Have to try to stay in as much of a cutting edge as possible, even if you hate technology. You cannot be afraid of it. It's kind of going back to what I was saying about the Stanford professor, how different people respond to different challenges. You have to embrace the challenge of growth and change in this new society that we live in the new economy we live in. If you're afraid of it, if you want to, I want to do it my way, sort of thing. I don't want to, I want to get this job and just stay there forever. You want to be timid about your careers. That is the formula for disaster for you personally. That's the formula for disaster. You have to embrace the change, or you'll be in trouble real fast. Really fast. Things are going to change so fast now. Okay, well, thank you again. No class next week. I'll post. I think they're probably already there, but make sure that all the videos I want you to watch are there. I might move one of them this week into next week. I'll take a look at the videos. Seems like there's a little bit more there than I've told you had to watch typically. So I might move one of this week's into next week's, and we'll see. Okay, thank you.